fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're going to be doing a lyrical and psychological analysis of the song Sharks by The Warning. And I have to say that this song completely blows me away, both musically and lyrically. It's almost like the songs that were not released before Keep Me Fed came out are actually some of the most magnificent on the album. It's like they saved the best for last. And this song speaks to me very personally. I think I mentioned this in another analysis, but the maturity and expressiveness that we see lyrically on this album is something that struck me right away. The Warning, of course, always have great lyrics, but they spent so much time in interviews recently giving disclaimers about how not all songs need to be deep and how they wanted to write freely for this album without trying to find complicated metaphors or needing to use a thesaurus. But I actually think that this more authentic and direct style of writing is incredibly effective for this album. And I have to argue that these songs are still incredibly deep. And I can see in their writing that they aren't just telling stories. A lot of these songs are powerful because they are sharing their own real experiences. The songs that Keep Me Fed just seem to be a little bit more raw and honest, which is really appealing. Now, it's my understanding that the lyrics for Sharks were written by the amazing Pau, and the band said in a blurb that the song itself is about perfectionism and judgment and feeling like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If I had to sum it up as a listener, I would say it's about the heavy psychological toll of constant evaluation, using sharks as a metaphor for all these predatory people in their lives who are seemingly always on the lookout for opportunities to criticize them or to try to hurt them, despite the fact that their talent, artistic integrity, and devotion to fans is almost unparalleled. There's just a big difference between candid and thoughtful critique and toxic and intentionally malicious criticism and judgment, which can lead artists to question their own abilities and feel the need to prove that they're worthy of their fame or even steer away from their true artistic vision, which I think is what Sharks is really addressing. So let's go ahead and go through the song line by line together. And as always, I have to give the disclaimer first that this is just my own personal analysis. I am in no way attempting to speak for the band, and with all works of art, there can be multiple valid meanings and interpretations, including whatever the song means to us personally. And of course, I want to hear your interpretation, so please don't forget to leave that down below. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and dive into Sharks. The song starts out with the lines, "There's something lurking in the water. You better swim a little faster now." So we see right away that they sense a hidden threat or danger, and they feel like they need to be on high alert because someone or something is ready to attack them. It goes on to say, "You better be good. You better bring proof because they're watching over you." To me, even though they are clearly extremely strong women, this suggests a very natural fear of judgment or even rejection and a need to validate themselves, even though through the eyes of their actual fans, it's completely unwarranted. It's kind of ironic because in the case of The Warning, they are just so insanely talented and they have literally been working on their craft since childhood. So it seems crazy to think that they would feel this pressure to prove themselves, but they have said directly in a few recent interviews that they do feel that way sometimes. And let's face it, no band or artist of any kind is going to be able to escape haters completely. It doesn't even matter how talented you are or how good the actual product is. Some people are just never going to be satisfied. Sometimes it's just that musical taste is subjective. But I also think that we all learn in life that you really can't please everyone. And some people actually want to not like you. Some people actually derive pleasure from trying to bring you down. And like this line suggests, instead of just not caring, these people are the ones that usually watch everything you're doing the most. Haters always pay the closest attention, which shows on a psychological level how important you actually are to them and how much you really affect them. But because they're hurt or jealous or feel inferior for some reason, they just try to invent imperfections in you so they can feel better about themselves. I think we see The Warning bringing up this theme fairly often in their lyrics, definitely in songs like Narcisista, but also in several of the new tracks on the Keep Me Fed album. Now next come the iconic lines, "Don't bleed, don't bleed." This is such a clever thing to say because we all know that shedding blood will just attract more sharks. And so they are saying that even though they are being hurt by these people, they can't show it because it's going to trigger more scrutiny and more predatory behavior. It's also a very poignant line because of course you are going to bleed in some way, at least metaphorically, when someone hurts you. So it's like they are telling themselves to do the impossible and completely ignore what would be anyone's natural instinct. They're trying to force themselves to be inhumanly strong because they think that's going to be their best defense. It is just a brilliant way to express their inner struggle. The song then goes on to say, "It's the meat that really matters. The bones all end up falling out." This is a really interesting line. I've gone back and forth on what the meaning of this one might be, and I would love to hear your interpretation, so definitely let me know in the comments. But I think the meat here might represent what they feel are the essential qualities that make an artist or a specific work of art valuable or credible, whereas the bones might symbolize the more superficial aspects that people might focus on in the beginning, but then eventually stop caring about because they don't have any substance. So if that's the meaning they're getting at, then they're really saying that their validation will come from the product itself, that they are providing what is needed musically for people to feed on and consume, and that this is where everyone's focus should be, not on all these superficial drama, which I definitely agree with. Now the next line says, "If you're gonna rot, then add to the plot because they're always watching you." I love the cynicism here. I think it's showing the dark side of being in the public eye, where even your negative experiences and struggles can be exploited for entertainment. I think Pow is almost sarcastically saying to go ahead and make it part of the show because their critical eyes are going to be on you anyway. It's a very powerful line. We then have a repeat of the lines, "Don't bleed," followed by the words, "Don't, don't, don't." This repetition feels almost like a mantra or a subconscious command to themselves not to react to any of this, even though it hurts. Again, just really effective writing here. Then we get to the pre-chorus, which says, "Couldn't be everything that you wanted me to be, but you're keeping me close like an enemy." Here, I think they are sharing their frustration with people making it seem like they aren't living up to their personal expectations or standards, or they aren't going to support their new direction or sound, which has probably led to a lot of undeserved feelings of inadequacy and even resentment sometimes. When they talk about these people keeping them close, even though they do feel this way, it just really showcases the extremely toxic nature of these types of relationships. And if you think about it, most of these people are in reality complete strangers to them. So they are feeling pressure to please people who don't know them personally and also don't have their best interest at heart. They don't want them to be able to express themselves as actual artists. They just want them to be this one specific thing. And I think the sad thing is that we all know that The Warning really do put so much effort into delivering the best possible albums and shows for their fans. So it's unfortunate that such a small minority of their audience make them feel like they're falling short of expectations, when in reality, 99.9999999% of us clearly see that they are pouring their hearts and souls into their work and are always striving to create the best possible experience for their fans. I think in life, unfortunately, it's usually the most negative people that tend to be the loudest. But finally, we get to the chorus where Dany's incredible voice comes in and says, "Help me now, how am I supposed to hide?" This is my absolute favorite part in the song, and I think this line beautifully shows their desperation and helplessness in the face of all this constant scrutiny. It's a plea for help that shows how overwhelming it can be to feel this way. But while I think the words themselves suggest a fear of being exposed or revealed for who they really are, I think in reality they have a lot more to do with just feeling vulnerable. They really do seem very confident in who they are as people, and they appear to be very well adjusted to their extremely unique situation. But I can't imagine being subjected to all of this is easy. The song goes on to say, "Watch me drown, ripped to shreds under the light," showing that they feel like there's always this spotlight on them where the whole world is privy to their worst moments, and what they see or they feel are their personal failures, and they feel like they are completely exposed. So they feel defenseless against all these harsh judgments and criticisms from these toxic people. The next line says, "Sharks come circling, don't say anything, waiting for the teeth to bite you." Basically saying that there's nothing they can do but stay quiet and take it, and that at this point, they actually expect these people to try to hurt them. It goes on to say, "Shut your mouth, you know they're bleeding you out." This kind of just reinforces their sense of being silenced or even controlled by these external forces, and the realization that these people are draining them and that they're being consumed by their negativity. They don't want to be affected by this, and they probably fully understand why it's happening and that it should be meaningless, but they are acknowledging that it does bring them down sometimes and maybe even makes them want to sacrifice their own authenticity. The song then goes back to their mantra of "don't bleed, don't bleed." Again, just trying to tell themselves not to let these people get under their skin, and almost invalidating their own suffering and the very real threat that these people bring to their creativity and overall mental health. The song then moves on to the next verse, which begins with, "Violence only brings violence." I think this is kind of part of their inner dialogue, where they are trying to figure out how to cope with all of this and telling themselves that aggression and retaliation is not going to make the situation better. It's actually going to make things a lot worse. I think the next line continues to show this chosen strategy, or at least what they are thinking would be taking the higher road. It says, "Keep quiet, put the muscle on." In other words, just stuff it all down, bury it all inside, and just work on building your inner strength or even your own physical strength to be able to continue to endure all this. I think this line is interesting because knowing the personalities of these women, and specifically Pau, who I believe wrote these lyrics, I don't think this way of thinking really aligns with her personal philosophy at all. Maybe it's what she's telling herself would be the better strategy professionally, or just showing that she's mentally exhausted from all this, and that this type of emotional suppression might be the only way that she feels that she can cope right now. But I think it's more of her just kind of repeating the unrealistic advice that she's getting from the outside world. People telling the band just to suck it up and take it. And honestly, this is usually not that great of advice, because in most cases, repression just leads to a lot of negative consequences. Ideally, of course, we want to find healthy ways to process and express emotions. But that may seem really difficult when you are torn constantly and you are under such extreme pressure all the time. Now the next line is, "You're stuck in your skin, there's no way to win because they're watching over you." I think this line is basically just saying that they are who they are and that it's not something that they can really change. So if people don't like that or they can't accept that, then it's a useless battle to try to please them, because it isn't something that they can control. No matter what you do, these people are going to continue to constantly evaluate you and try to find faults. But then it seems like there's a slight mood change with the next line. It says, "If we only bring silence, all we'll ever be is good as dead." I love this line because it's basically saying that they know that if they succumb to all this negativity and pressure, it's like they'd just be invisible and their art wouldn't be able to affect people in the way that it does. So it's almost like they are reminding themselves that what they are saying through their music is valuable, and that they might even feel empty inside if they let themselves be silenced by haters, because that's what they feel like they were born to do. The song then continues with the next line that says, "When they got you surrounded, waiting to pounce in, they're watching over you." Again, just showing that they feel powerless and almost trapped, because even when these people aren't there judging them, there's almost a sense of paranoia where they know this hasn't ended and that eventually the sharks are going to attack again, so they can't really let their guard down. It's like they've come to accept that this negativity is always going to be there, lurking somewhere in the background, even when things seem quiet. Now, the rest of the song has lyrical repeats in a slightly different order, but there is one last little clever change of lyric towards the end after they say, "It's the meat that really matters." This time they add the question, does it really matter? To me, this seems like the big question that they are asking themselves throughout the entire song, because of course it should matter. And of course it does matter to rational, non-toxic, non-hating people, regardless of whether or not they happen to be a fan of your specific genre of music or your specific art. But the world, unfortunately, is just not made up of all people like that. People who actually care about what you have to say, or about the strength of your character, or what you are contributing artistically. For some people, it's just never going to be enough. They will always find something to nitpick or criticize and completely overlook or disregard all the good things you've done. And that's why it's important not to let these people change your artistic vision or what you decide to put out musically. These people shouldn't have a say in anything you do, but again, we're all human, and sometimes the toxicity does get to us. Fortunately, I think this behavior really comes from a very small percentage of people. They just happen to be very vocal, which can definitely wear you down, especially when you've given everything you have emotionally and artistically since childhood. And I think that's why they end the song by having this long repetition of the words "don't bleed," and then a final acknowledgement of the fact that these people are bleeding them out. But what I really think is amazing is that they were able to take all these negative experiences and negative emotions and turn them into such an incredible song. And as I said earlier, this song really does speak to me personally as an artist, not as a musician, although I have played guitar since middle school, but as a dancer. Before entering the field of psychology, I spent many, many years as a professional dancer and choreographer. And although the negative people that I encountered were certainly in the minority, I definitely know what it feels like to have people actively rooting against you and wanting you to fail for some reason and finding the need to criticize everything that you do. And it is especially draining and frustrating when you're trying to be a force for good, which is absolutely the case for The Warning. I can officially say that Sharks is my favorite track on the Keep Me Fed album, and I really hope that they decide to make a music video for it, because I would love to analyze it, and I would love to see what they come up with for a storyline, because we know it's going to be brilliant. But those are my thoughts on Sharks, and as always, I would love to hear yours, so don't forget to leave a comment down below. Also, let me know if you have any requests for future videos. I hope you enjoyed today's analysis. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next video.